Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Ham Radio Basics Live, Season 4, Episode 25, Ham Radio News and Update 6/24/2026. Got a good crowd already on hand. Andy's here. Welcome, Andy. Cooley is here. Welcome. Thank you guys for stopping by. Sergeant Rock, welcome. Good to see you, my friend. That's awesome. Got a huge announcement today, so to speak. Our sister channel, Ham Radio Divas, has now joined the live stream. So welcome to Ham Radio Divas. And if you're watching on Ham Radio Divas, please make sure that you like and hit a thumbs up on that and drop us a comment. We would love to get that for you. But we wanted to add Ham Radio Divas into the mix, our sister channel, and I kind of act as their Elmer, and I'm very excited to have them join the mix here, and it's exciting that they're on board. Also, as a reminder too, this weekend is Field Day. It's on the 27th, which is coming up this weekend. So if you're in a state that's not like ours, where it's, and I'll talk about that here in a second, if you have an opportunity to participate or to even to go to one, please do so. It's one of the best experiences I think you'll ever have, and encourage people who may be on the border or thinking about, becoming a ham. Encourage them to come to these events. It really kind of lends itself to. It's a great open house, so to speak, about ham radio. Is really what it is, and the ones that do it well do it really well. And I know there are several clubs that really go all out. I know there's one club in the state of Florida. I think it's called Gold Coast. It's down towards Fort Lauderdale, in that area, and they do a real good job. I follow them out on Instagram, and they're very active and very involved. Those are the kind of clubs that I like. The club that I'm with is pretty active and pretty involved as well too. So, but it's a real good way to get exposed to ham radio. As I said, it's a really an open house for ham radio. In Florida, though, it's gonna be a little bit of a challenge, because today physical temperature was 98 degrees. Heat index is at 110, which combines not only the air temperature, but the UV factor, the humidity, and everything. And there's advisories to stay indoors between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. and or even later, 6 o'clock, because it's too hot. You could literally get a sunburn wearing a T-shirt like I am, walking out to the car, a 10-second walk out to the car. It's that bad, yeah. So you really need to be very mindful. Try to do your activities before 9 and after 5, and I try to do that during these months. It's just absolutely brutal. Chris, welcome. Good to see you this afternoon. This afternoon, I got you guys know that I have been doing my presentation, my top 10 list, and I have just been off the wall bombarded with fantastic comments about it. It has just really re-energized me, and I'm really enjoying it, because it's providing a lot of useful information. I mean, we're gonna get some. I have a lot of HTs that I got over the holidays that I really want to review, sit down and review, and want to hook it up to check for spurious emissions. I'm gonna my tiny SA ultra analyzer that I'm gonna get. That's coming up, okay? That's probably going to be in about another month or two. But these top 10 lists have really, I think, made a big difference and a big impact in a lot of ham radios, people's lives. And it really provides a lot of useful information. So we're going to keep continuing them. And even I'll try to start working in product reviews. And the closer that I get to retirement, the more that I'll be able to do things like that as well, too. So, all right, we're going to go ahead and get started here. And let me go ahead and share the screen. That would probably be a good idea. All right. Okay. Top 10 things to do before you do POTA. And this was actually derived from one of the comments that I got from the original POTA presentation that I did. So I said, you know what? This is going to make an excellent presentation in and of itself. You have to prepare before you go out to do POTA. Otherwise, you're going to have one of your parts of your experience is not going to go well, and you need all parts of your experience to go well when you're doing POTA. So, all right, a successful POTA activation begins long before you arrive at the park. The more preparation you do at home, the more time you'll spend making contacts instead of solving problems. Here are 10 things every activator should do before heading out. And the thought preparation often determines success. It's very, very true. This is something you can't skimp on. You have to be 100% prepared before you go out to do POTA. Okay. Number 10, create a POTA game plan. And first of all, decide which park you'll activate. And that's always, it's fun, but it also depends on where you live. All right. Like where I live, I have one that's close by and other ones that are a ways away. And the one that's close by is kind of on the swampy side, kind of like with a lot of critters, if you know what I mean, side. So that's probably not a good one to go and activate. So you want to find ones like that picture there, maybe by a lake or have some trees or things like that as well too. And how long you'll operate. And again, I talked about the weather bears into factor as far as that's concerned. But have an idea how long you're going to be there. Are you going to be there 2 hours? Are you going to be there 4 hours? Are you going to be there more than 4 hours? Well, you need to plan accordingly, okay? And then what bands you'll be using. And we'll get into that here in a second. And which equipment you'll bring. I mean, are you going to want to, if you pick some popular bands, you're going to get pileups, okay? Do you want to take a IC705 or do you want to take a 7300 that's going to bust through these pileups? And, that's completely up to you. And, simple plan prevents confusion when you arrive. Thought activators who plan ahead usually make more contacts. And that's so true. Because if you bring, if you bring a 705, which is an excellent, 705 is one of my favorite radios of all time. I absolutely love it. But, you could be inviting a lot of pileups, having that low wattage and being able to get through those pileups is really going to be a real challenge with that. So you may want to think about, depending upon, what you're going to activate that day at what park, what that band is, do people have a tendency, to come in on that band, and will you invite pileups? I mean, and it always invariably seems like when you go out to do POTA, like if you bring a 705 or some type of QRP radio out there, that it invites pileups for some reason. I don't know why. That's just one of those things. Okay, pick the right battery and match the battery to your operating style. Consider radio power level, operating duration, weather conditions, and reserve capacity. Many activators bring a backup battery just in case. And I want to stop right there. That is so crucial, okay, to your success on a POTA outing, is bringing a backup battery just in case. And with the 705, I'll bring one of my Bioenos. That's for sure. But what I will also do, I'll bring a couple of the internal batteries for the 705, and I have an extended internal battery as well. Plus, occasionally, if I think I'm going to go ahead and go a little bit longer, I'll bring a second Bioeno out there just for grins and giggles, just to make sure that there is no issues there whatsoever. And know your weather conditions too. If it's hot outside, it's going to chew up some more of that battery than you probably would like. And versus if it's cold as well too, that's gonna, extremes in temperatures aren't good for batteries either way. And you want to make sure that it has enough reserve capacity to last. If you're going to be out there a couple hours, you're not going to need a powerful battery as you're going to be out there for say 4 or 6 hours. So you can kind of plan accordingly as far as that's concerned. Thought power is the fuel that keeps your activation running. Yeah, 100%. I mean, you don't have any power, you're not on the air, period. That's just bottom line for that. Number 8, choose the right antenna. Not every antenna works well in every park. Think about available trees, open fields, setup time, and target bands. The best antenna is the one that fits the location. The right antenna can make all the difference. It's very true. If you go to a wooded area, I mean, end-fed half-waves are kind of like a natural and a no-brainer to use as far as antennas concerned. But if you're going to an open area with, just a lot of picnic benches and things like that, and maybe not a lot of trees, you want to think about bringing a nice tall vertical in, say that's why the Chameleon MPAS 2.0 is just a perfect POTA antenna. It just absolutely is perfect because you can go from having that vertical, you can go ahead and have an end-fed half-wave with that. There's a lot of combinations. You can buy that option to have the, I saw a video on it last week. I call it the V antenna. That's just my nickname for it. But yeah, you can do that as well too. Yeah, Sergeant Rock, they are. And I'll digress for a second here. With the pythons down in the Everglades, they're a real problem. They're killing deer. They're killing livestock. I mean, they've even gone after gators and crocodiles as well too. They don't have any compunction, and the Florida Department of Wildlife will pay you to go out and hunt and get these because they are extremely aggressive and they have a voracious appetite. So yeah, that's very, very, very true. You don't want to mess around. And with gators, you don't want to mess around either. And, some people have actually followed gators and filmed them as they go back into the ponds. And I don't know why they do that, because those gators can turn. A lot of people think the gators are slow. They are not slow. They are fast, even the big ones. So you need to keep your distance. All right. Okay. Thought the right antenna can make all the difference. Getting back to our on point topic here. It really does. It really makes a big difference for your setup. A lot of times you find it's easier to just set up a vertical than to go ahead and have to go ahead and use your right arm and put a weight and try to get that end-fed half-wave up over a tree. I mean, you can do that. It's just depends upon where you're at. Like this gentleman right here. He's in a wooded location. You're probably going to do better with an end-fed half-wave than a vertical right there. So, all right. Number 7, check band conditions. Enough cannot be said about something like this. You want to check solar flux, A and K index, MUF forecast, and recent POTA spots. And good conditions can dramatically improve your results. And, they vary not only from day to day, but hour to hour as well, too. So you kind of got to be on top of all that. And that's why, they've come up with a new iteration of ham clock, which provides a lot of that information, and it's extremely useful information. When I first got into ham radio, I had no idea. I'd talk about ham clock. Oh, this is pretty cool. There's a nice map up there and everything. But then somebody broke it down for me and told me exactly what all is involved with that. And I'm like, wow, this is extremely useful information. This is definitely something that you want to bookmark. And then, they've had to kind of revamp it since what happened over the past year with the gentleman that created it passing away. And I think they've got it to where it's stable again now. But you can also go out to, I think it's QRZ, and go out and get a lot of that information as well, based on the area that you're in. And again, it can change, and it can really weather changes, things like this. So you kind of got to stay on top of this, and you got to have a game plan. Like the night before, you take a look and see what the forecast is, and maybe plan 1, 2, 3, or maybe even 4 different frequencies to operate off of on bands that are going to be, have good propagation that day. So, just kind of plan accordingly when you do something like that. Right, plan your frequencies, and fits right in. Identify primary and backup frequencies before leaving home. Be prepared for contests, nets, interference, crowded bands. Flexibility is key to a successful activation. Thought always have backup frequency options. And this is where the night before, when you go out to do this, you do your homework, and it's fun homework, but you do it nonetheless because you want to go out there and look. Say, I don't know if there are general websites to find things like contests or nets or things like that, but pretty much if you're in the area that you live in, you probably know about things like nets. So that probably shouldn't be a surprise to you. Crowded bands, I would go out there. I would go out the night before and maybe scan the band, so to speak, and see what people are kind of honing in on. Now, I know it's going to be different the next day, but it kind of gives you maybe a little bit of an indication that you're going to have some activity on those bands. So kind of like be wary of that in contests. I think ARRL may have part of a website. I don't know. Afternoon, welcome. Thanks for stopping by, KY4. There may be a website out there that lists all the contests and the frequencies that they're going to be using, and I would definitely go ahead and check that out before you go out. Again, knowing where you want to go ahead and land your frequency on, based on the band conditions, and also based on these things like whether there's contest or nest or interference, or it gets crowded on those bands. What I would do when you go out to a park to activate it, and one of the things that I recommend, and I know several people that do POTA quite a bit do this, is they'll go out to the band and they'll take a look, and they'll see if there's a lot of activity on or around or near that band, they'll change that band. And that's something that I would advise you to do, because you want to have people to have a good experience when they're doing POTA. You don't want to instigate pileup, so to speak. You don't want to be around crowded bands, because they'll be bleed over, and it just gets really ugly with things like that. So, all right, let's move on to test your logging system. Verify your logging software works, the park reference is correct, device batteries are charged, and time and date are accurate. Bad log create headaches later, and they really do. If you keep an accurate log, it makes all the difference in the world on how your activation ends up truly being at the end of the day. And that's why you get into it the night before, you bring it up, you make sure there's no errors or anything. You don't want to go out there, say out to the field, because I know, now sometimes with me, I would carry my T-Mobile hotspot out there just for grins and giggles, just to have internet access, but most people don't have that. And a lot of times, you'll come up and you'll power up your laptop and you'll say that firmware update's required, and you have no internet access, and you can't do that. And you're either stuck doing it manually, or you have to give up POTA for the day. And those aren't really good choices. I mean, you can still do it manually, and it slows things down tremendously when you do that. It really does. So it's a word to the wise. Get out there the night before, fire it up, make sure there's no firmware updates that are needed for that, and that it's working. All right, charge your phone and devices. Your phone is one of the most important tools in your kit. It provides spotting, navigation, weather, and emergency communications. Start the day with a full charge. A charged phone is essential field equipment. And while we get batteries ready for our either our QRP radios or our 7300s or so, think about having some of those power banks, like from Anchor, for your phone. If you're going to be out there 4, 5, 6 hours, even if you're not using your phone, it's going to deplete during the day. So you're going to want to make sure that you have that. And also, too, one of the words to the wise, I know a lot of people will really want to go off-road, so to speak, and do their POTA experience, which is fine. But you want to make sure that you have some type of alternate communication in line, and I'm just not talking your ham radio or your cell phone. I have a Garmin that I use, and I've done that in case, because I do a lot of traveling in Florida on some of the rural roads, and it's not easily accessible. It's kind of off the mainstream, and I wanted to have that available to me in case, for some reason I would get lost, number one, or number two, I can't get a hold of somebody, because it has some emergency contact functions on it as well too. So, you may want to invest in a device like that, or if you wanted to invest in a satellite phone, you could do that as well too. But, be very mindful of where you're operating from. Make sure that there's probably a cell signal is something that I would strongly encourage you guys to go ahead and do. Okay, pack water and safety items. Water, snacks, first aid kit, sunscreen, bug spray. Comfort and safety should always come first. Safety is part of every successful activation. And it's true. And you also probably want to pick a shady location. You want to work under either a tree, or you probably want to work in a picnic shelter that has shade to it. And you want to make sure that you bring enough water and snacks, because you're going to be there. You're going to be there 4 to 6 hours. You're going to get hungry, and you're going to get thirsty, and you don't want to get dehydrated when you're in the middle of an activation. And also too, having a first aid kit is always paramount. I mean, just almost always when you're going out to a park like that, to have that on hand. Splinters can happen from wood and tables, just a whole host of things. Having some bug spray on hand would be great as well, and sunscreen, especially here in Florida. I mean, my gosh, if you go out to do an activation this weekend, you're going to need to go from head to toe with sunscreen. And I seriously kid you not with something like that. It's really, the sun is really invasive right now at this point. Okay. Verify all of your gear. Before leaving, confirm you have your radio, antenna, coax, battery, microphone, headphones, adapters. A checklist helps prevent forgotten items. Thought checklists save activations, and they do. They really do. It makes a big difference. And one of the things that there's not a slide for it, but I wanted to make mention of this. When you're checking your antenna out, you check your coax out as well too, because if you've used that coax for several years, there can be some bends and cracks in it, and if it has too many cracks in it, you're going to want to go ahead and replace that. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. You don't want to carry bad coax with you to an activation. Get everything set up, and you find out that once you get there that your coax is bad. So that's something you should probably definitely check out ahead of time. At least once a week, check that out. If you do a lot of POTA activations, you're probably aware of how well all your equipment is, but especially kind of hone in on your coax, because that can be a weak link in this chain right here. I mean, you can get everything set up with the radio, have your antennas set up right, you have your batteries charged, ready to go, your microphone's working, your headphones are ready to go, you have adapters that you may need, but having that coax, being working as well too, and not, having bends, kinks, or, cuts in it, or showing signs of wear, that's really important. That's something that you probably definitely want to hone in on. The last one is research the park, and you want to review the park access hours. I mean, that's really important, because you don't want to get there and find out, you don't want to get there at 6 a.m. and find out the park doesn't open until 7. All right, or you don't want to go and start an activation at 1 in the afternoon and finds out for some reason the park closes at 4. All right, and you wanted to do more than 2 or 3 hours there. And you want to make sure it's convenient to where you are and it's easily accessible. Restrooms, I mean, if you're going to be there 4 to 6 hours, you're gonna need to have restrooms nearby as well too. I mean, that's just part of the name of the game right there, as far as that's concerned. And operating areas, you need to be very mindful of that. And your park reference number, when you're logging, you're going to need that down. So. And knowing the park ahead of time reduces surprises. And that's why I almost always suggest, if you're going to a park that you're not familiar with, get with another ham who has activated that park and get some questions answered before you go. That way it will make your experience when you get there a whole lot easier and a whole lot smoother. So, conclusion, great POTA activations don't happen by accident. A little preparation can mean more contacts, less stress, better safety, more fun. And question for viewers, what item is always in your POTA Go kit? And and that's something you guys can go ahead and answer on your own there. That's true, Chris. That's very true. That's very true. You want to be very mindful of trying to include things. And the more that you do POTA, the more that this will become automatic and part of your routine before you head out the door, that you check these things. You don't want to be ready to head out the door and find out, your 2 batteries you're going to take need to have been charged. Or you don't want to head out the door and find out your coax is kinked or it's cracked and you need to replace your coax at that point in time. Or you don't want to walk out the door and find out that your mic has a short in it and it's going to need to be fixed or replaced. The list goes on and on and on. If you're doing a lot of POTA activations, I'm sure you're well aware of your gear status, how things are. I'm sure you're well aware of keeping your batteries charged and ready to go, whether they're external Bioenno batteries or internal batteries to your radio, like the 705. You're mindful of your coax and your antenna system. And the other thing too is, and one of the things that a lot of people don't like to talk about is kind of like cleanup, because, when you're done with your activation and taking everything apart, one of the things that I like to do is have a couple of cloths on hand and wipe some things down, especially if you're in a muddy area. That's going to help, and that's going to help prevent damage to some of your equipment, especially your coax and maybe your connectors as well. That makes a big difference with that. I always do that and make sure before I put that away that it's relatively clean before I do that. It does make a difference. And where you set up your radio as well too, you may want to get that mat. I know. I think he calls himself the QRP guy. I'm not sure. He's on Etsy. Sells a lot of great ham radio gear. He has a nice mat that you can take with you out on POTA activations that would spread right across a picnic table. It'd be perfect, prevent splinters, and be a great place to set your radio down on top of. So think about something like that. I know he's out on Etsy, and you definitely want to check him out. Well, that's all I have for today, guys. I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for stopping by and spending. We appreciate you spending part of your days here Wednesday with us here in doing this. And for those of you where it's south and where it's really warm, please try to stay mindful of the weather and advisories and things like that, and stay indoors if you have to. And we want to welcome all those folks from Ham Radio Diva that are watching us for the first time. Thank you. We really appreciate that. Please make sure that you like, comment, and make sure that you subscribe to Ham Radio Divas. They do a great job on their channel. They really have some great content out there. You definitely want to go ahead and check them out. And as always, everybody, it's a great day to make a QSO. 7-3s, everybody. Have a great rest of your evening and week.